Yeah, today let us discuss a new topic which is called as span of management. Let us try to find out what exactly the meaning of it, where it is being used, and some details regarding the span of the word span of management. It's all about. Span of management explains about number of subordinates a manager can manage. In the sense like under a single manager or the supervisors, number of subordinates who are reporting to that particular manager. So there is another word in the either you can say it as span of management or you can use the word span of control. Both these words have been used for the number of employees or the number of subordinates who report to a manager. So let us look into it in detail what exactly span of management is all about. When you say about span of management, it can be a wide span or it can be a narrow span. So wide span, it means like number of subordinates a manager is having is more number of people are there, in the sense like for example 15 people are reporting to a single manager. So here there is no hierarchical level, the only one level is there. So all these 15 employees are reporting to a single manager. You call it as a wide span. Here we use another word called flat structure. Why? Because all these employees, 15 employees, are reporting to a single manager and then it is flat in nature. Let me look into the next one, that is narrow span. Narrow span in the sense there are a lot of hierarchies are there, in the sense like so many employees are reporting to another higher levels and then you find that a senior manager is there at the top. Let me make it a little more clear. Assistant manager reporting to a manager, manager reporting to a senior manager reporting to a general manager, the general manager reporting to a director and senior director and so on. Here you find that different levels of hierarchies are there. See here, the structure of the organization is not a flat in nature. It is a tall in nature because you have different levels are there. So that is what the difference between wide span and narrow span. So you can say the structure is flat in nature and tall in nature. I hope it is quite clear. So that is what span of management is all about. See here in this example, I have taken the wide span of control and the narrow span of control. Here in this wide, see you have a CEO at the top and you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 employees or 5 subordinates are reporting to a manager. So you can say that span of control is 5. Here in this case, around 34 employees or 34 subordinates are reporting to a single manager. So you can say that the span of control is 34. Here it is pictorially, it is being represented here, the tall and a flat structure. See here, as I said, one under a single manager, two employees are there or two subordinates are there. Under each subordinates, again, there are subordinates are there for each manager. So like that, you can see that the structure is taller in nature because different hierarchical levels are there. So that is why you call it as a flat structure, sorry, tall structure. When you talk about flat structures, under one manager, you have only 5 or 6 or maybe 10, or it again depending upon the capability of the manager, how many number of employees he can manage. That is why you have a narrow and a wide span. Again, one more example I have shown here. So now let us see into it the difference between the narrow and the wide. So as I said, in the narrow, again it all depends on the nature of the job. If you have the nature of the job is too complex in nature, so you cannot have more number of employees working under you, because no you have to monitor the job quite minutely, and there is a lot of deliberation, there is a lot of discussion, such kind of things are required for that particular job. It is better to go for a narrow kind of a structures. But in case if the job is known to the employees, they are highly competent in that, and there is not much of a support from the supervisor required, it is better to go for a wider span of control, where you can have like a 10 or 15 number of employees, or maybe more than that, depending upon what exactly the nature of the job. So this is what the major difference between the wide and a narrow span of control. So here in this slide, we're trying to look into it like the characteristics of the flat organization, that is the wide span of control. What are the positives and negatives related to it? So when you talk about the pros and cons, the positive aspects related to the flat structure or the flat organizational structure is the first one, it encourages delegations, in the sense like instead of the single manager doing all the job, so he is delegating the job to the subordinates based on the capability of the subordinates. He try to understand that, and then the work is being delegated, so that no, you can monitor it. Or see, again, you may find that due to such kind of circumstances, the subordinates are highly competent. As I said before, they are able to take up the job without much of a supervision from the manager. So that is what we say, that encourage delegations, it improves the communications, it can reduce the cost, because no, there is not much of a hierarchical levels and then fewer levels, and the manager can manage them very effectively, and it again prevents the workforce from disengaging by focusing on empowerment, autonomy, and self-directions. But when you talk about the negative aspects, because high managerial workload comes with a higher span of control. So you may find sometimes the workload is quite high. Again, it all depends upon how capable the subordinates are, and chances are there some kind of a confusion can happen, distress can happen. So if we look at it from that angle, these can be the negatives when you go for the flat organizational structures. Now let us look into it. What are the characteristics of a tall organizational structures or the narrow span? When you take into consideration of the narrow span, see, rapid communication, because under a manager only one or two people are under him, so that no, he can effectively communicate to the people, to the subordinates, and have a easier and a smaller control of, I mean, the groups are very smaller in nature, so that no, it is easy for him to control, and a greater degree of specialization and division of labor is more effective there, and more and better opportunities for the employee promotion, because you have many hierarchical levels are there, so it is you can more opportunities for promotions are there in the narrow span of controls. But when you talk about the negative aspect of it, see, communication can take too long, hampering the decision making. So if you look at it from the negative side, so that is a negative of it, or more silos can be created, not much of an interaction with other, because there is a manager under him, one or two employees are there, so they try to confine with themselves without having much of a scope of interaction with other employees. Employees may feel lost and powerless. Again, as I said, if you look into it from the positive and negative aspects, these are the positive and negative, which is related to the tall organization structure, or call it as a narrow span of controls. So there are a lot of factors which is determining the effective span. So let us look into it one after the other. As I said before, the capacity of the supervisor is something which is very important, because if you have the manager or the supervisor is highly capable, or the ability of the supervisor is so good, then I think you can again ability in the sense like whether related to the decision making ability or communication ability or leadership skill, when you take into considerations, if the supervisor is very effective in all these kind, so you can think about having a flatter structures. Or again, as I said, again, depending upon the nature of the job, and the capability of the supervisors, you can decide what span can be taken into consideration. Capability of the subordinate is also very important. As I said, if the subordinate is highly competent, highly trained, highly I mean not much of a supervision is required, then you can go for a wider span of control. And if it is that is not possible, then it is better to go for a narrow span. So again, the capability or the capacity of the subordinate is something important to choose what span has to be taken into consideration. Again, as I said before, the nature of the job is also important. So if it is a routine kind of a job, and the subordinates are very well versed in that particular job, you can go for a wider span, more number of employees can be taken into considerations. But where it is too complex in nature, more of discussion is required, and then it is better to go for a narrow span, where a supervisor can minutely monitor the subordinate and help him in doing the task in a effective manner. Degree of decentralizations, again, the delegation is what again we are talking about. The subordinates, when is required, less attention is required, or where more attention is required, depending upon, you can choose whether it is a narrow or a wider wider span of control. Then planning. So well informed about what exactly the job roles are. Then I think they are very sure, because no, that is what I said about it is a routine kind of a job. Then where they know about what exactly they have to do it, then you can go for a wider span. If it is like every time the job has been, I mean, there is some kind of a changes happening, or where it is the planning is being required every now and then, and the support of the supervisor is required, then it is better to go for a narrow span. Then the use of staff assistants. You see, in case they can help the manager in reducing the workload by performing their certain managerial tasks. So that is again another way by which the work of the manager can be made effective. The another one is the last factor is the supervision from others. So not only that, the manager is managing the work of the subordinates. The managers from the other organization, not other organizations, the subordinates are being supervised by other managers in the organization, such as personal staff also can be. That is like HR people also can be helping the managers to get the work done. So these are some of the important things which we thought of talking in this particular topic. So thank you for your effective listening. Thank you.